Hi, I'm Carleton Eastlake, author of the novel Monkey Business, coming from Red Hand Press on May 3rd. You may be wondering why I'm wearing a tie. That'll become clearer once we get to the reading from the novel. But first, it may help to know something about the novel. So the story begins when a young writer on location in Florida on his first night is taken by his really terrible producers to a gentleman's club where they hope to humiliate and embarrass him. Instead, he is fortunate enough to meet a young woman who immediately begins interviewing him about creativity and rationality and the role of fantasy in everyday life, and he discovers himself falling in love at first sight. And from that, hilarity ensues, in which we get a fast-paced, satirical Hollywood adventure that along the way also gives us a look at how a TV show is created, while at the same time, this young man begins to experience a love story that, in a magic theater sort of way, like in The Tempest or The Magus or The Midnight Library, is beginning to change the way he views the world and may also change how we view the world. So the novel opens with a prologue where the hero tells us the pickle he's finally gotten into, and then he goes back to the start to tell us the story, and I'm just going to read to you now the 2 pages of that prologue. Part 1. I came because you called to me. Chapter 1. Even the hint of a smile would likely have made a regrettable first impression. Smoke as white as when they elect a new pope was still huffing from the ruins. Oranges on the nearest trees in the encircling grove had boiled on the branch. 40 firefighters and sheriff's deputies had responded to the blaze when their attention wasn't drawn to a new burst of embers spiraling into the night sky from the strike of a fireman's hook. Their looks were mostly directed at me. All the same, it was hard to keep a straight face. Just hours earlier, the sign topping the building had colored the raindrops on my car's windshield purple and pink from a mile away. Now the club's tallest feature was a gilded stripper's pole, rising inexplicably, or had Nicole planned this part too, but aptly erect from the ashes. Although that wasn't the biggest reason I was fighting not to break into laughter, nor was it the arson investigators' questions. Objectively, they were perfectly reasonable. Had I any idea how and why the fire started? Yes, but I don't want to share my theories because you'll place me under a psychiatric hold. Where had I been at the time I first suspected a blaze was consuming the club with me inside? In a place nearly everybody told me didn't exist. And I had to clench my abdominals tight to hold it all together at this question. What exactly had I been doing in the time leading up to the fire? Minute by minute. Do you really mean exactly, including specific body parts and such, or would choice euphemisms do? No, the greatest problem was his tie. They're giant penises, Nicole had explained to me, rising from a man's belt line and a tapering shaft to a swelling glans. Expertly tied, they even have a dimple to represent a urethra. I believe I replied, huh? Of course, they're also an advertisement. That's why they're an arrow pointing down towards the real penis. And a warning. The sharp point, the colors bright as coral snakes. If you want proof, look at that bullying idiot on TV. His indecently long, bright red ties. He's trying both to protect and hide his sad little member while creating the impression it's huge. Now, with Nicole very much on my mind, I couldn't help noticing that the arson investigator's tie was narrow and short. Perhaps his real one is so big, I told myself, he doesn't feel a need to boast. The gun would help with that attitude, and the badge, too. Still, oh God, no. I had to keep the images out of my mind. I had to. It's just that aside from everything else, his modest tie featured a dingy gray charcoal and black pattern, as though he'd been poking it into altogether too many fires. No wonder it's short, I thought. It must sting like hell. Stoneface, don't hold it in, he said. I enjoy good jokes. In fact, my friends say I have an incandescent wit. Why don't you tell me what's making you laugh?" "No, no question mark." Despite smiling at his own pun and using the more polite phrasing of a question, by the end of his sentence this man with a gun was unmistakably employing the imperative mood. Truth or lie? Truth or lie? It's that I remember one of the staff here, I waved a hand at the drift of cinders, telling me a man's tie says a lot about him. And I'm in such a strange place, after almost burning to a crisp, that it suddenly struck me yours sort of advertises you spend a lot of time around fires. That won a tiny smile. I wear these ties on the job because no matter how hard I try, they're always flopping into the ashes. He flicked at a smudge on the lapel of his sport coat. But when I dress up, I go for neon red and blue to draw the ladies' eyes. He nodded towards the lights on the fire engines and patrol cars, though maybe your friend would say I'm just wearing my team's colors. He was right. That's exactly what Nicole would have said, and the thought came to me, were they acquainted? Was he playing a role in the game? Her performance piece, her nimble experiment? And was the game still evolving? I considered asking him, but seeing, I suppose, my look of utter insanity, he was the first to speak. "Sure you don't want to go to that hospital now?" And that's the start of Monkey Business. You can find out more about me and the book at my website, carletoneastlake.com, and you can order the book at Red Hen Press.